going to show you how to use a technique called glazing. And to do it, I'm going to have a big sky and a little bit of ocean down here. I'm using my pencil very, very, very lightly to do some ghost lines. And all this is kind of giving me an idea where I want my puffy clouds to be. I bet you can't even see that, but that's okay. We don't want them to show up later. All right, so I'm going to wet my brush and I'm going to paint around the white clouds. There we go. Maybe you can see it's a bit shiny wherever I put the water. And while I get it wet so it can receive the watercolor, I'm designing because I want it to be interesting. I don't want to have a boring sky. So I'm thinking I'm going to start off with some yellow, as I like to do. And I can kind of move the edge around with my brush. I don't have to stick exactly to where I put the water. And because I wet the board, this paint is willing to travel wherever it's wet. Let's chase it down here and chase it up there. Gonna get a little bit more. And tip, tip, tip. Still designing, still trying to make it interesting. Okay. That'll do for now. Okay, tip, 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 tip. Now I'm gonna put in some of this pink. And I activate it by tapping some water, rubbing it around just a little bit, and tapping in some of this pink. Because the board's wet, I can chase it around just by tipping my wrist here. Tip down, over, sideways, back, and I stop when I get something that interests me. Okay, that'll work. Okay, so let's say that there are those big puffy clouds at the coast, and underneath those big fluffy clouds, let's put some sky. I think I'll use a bigger brush. So I'm starting off with just plain old water and pulling it down, 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 all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to use the same color system, starting off with yellow, changing the shape to make it more interesting if I want, pulling that yellow all the way down, even down to where the sand is going to be. And remember, don't be afraid of the tape. Go right off the tape. There we go. Okay, let me grab a little bit of this pink, activate it with some water, make sure it doesn't have any chunks in it. And I think I want to have some of that pink float through there. There it is, floating down and around. I like it. I like what's going on. And I might say that the ocean could have streaky clouds right above the water. Sometimes that happens. There'll be big fluffies and then not so fluffies, but more like a cloud bank. I think I'll do that. I feel like it. So I'm going to take some blue and just streak it across there. You can barely see it. Let me add some more. And if it's too light, just add another layer. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to that. There we go. Thinking clouds, thinking the Oregon coast. There we go. Now let's give it a little tip so it can mix and come up and invent colors and designs that will be beautiful. You can always feed it a little bit more starting at the tape and just tap, 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 tap. Sometimes you have to tap again if it doesn't want to go all the way across, but you can do it. All right, I'm liking that. One thing you got to remember to do is tidy up the tape. See, there's extra water and paint collecting on the tape. So just take a tissue and wipe that off. Otherwise, it'll come rushing back into your painting when you don't want it to. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, isn't it? You see, though, it looks a little bit like I cut those clouds out. The edges are too distinct. So I'm going to show you a wonderful trick of how to soften the edges. You take your brush and you wet it to get it clean. You lay it down on your paper towel and draw it through the paper towel. See how I'm wrapping the paper towel around it this way? So it's not soggy wet anymore, it's just a little damp. And what I'm going to do is touch the edge, starting on the inside where it's dry. I'm going to just push out a little bit. So wet, wipe, soften, and edge. Wet, wipe, soften, and edge. And I don't want all the edges to be soft because sometimes there are really distinct cloud edges. But it's looking better if you ask me. So here we go. Wet, wipe. Where else do I want a soft edge? Maybe right here. Okay. Wet, wipe. And I could even connect these two if I wanted. Swish. Sometimes I roll my brush. See how I did that? And that'll give you a nice gradual edge as well. Maybe a little bit of softening here. This causes you to pay attention to clouds once you start painting clouds. And you might notice, might have already noticed, how clouds also have a bit of shadow. The underside of a cloud is often a wee bit darker than the top part. So let's say I wanted shadow color of that, and I think maybe pink would be really a good choice. Let's try it. I'm taking some of that rosy color, and I'm taking just a nibble of this bluish gray, and we're going to try it. Okay, I could even add a little bit more shadow under there. There we go. But you probably think the same thing I do, that that edge is too distinct. So to soften it, we're going to do our favorite trick. Wet, wet, wipe, Start in the dry area and lift it off, and lift, and lift. Or you can start in the wet area and lift it up. But all I'm really doing is softening that edge a little bit. So the shadow side more gradually works into the top shiny part of the cloud. I hope you can see that. And I'm even going to do another trick. I'm going to take some shadow color and I'm going to make another layer of clouds come through here. Right through here. Because my paper's still wet, because I work fast, I can get all these interesting little cloud banks, like the things that happened at the coast. Okay, let's soften that just a tiny bit. Down we go, wipe it, lay your brush on the side, and soften that edge. Keep your eye on it and you'll know what to do. Maybe there's some shadow within the cloud as well. That happens. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay. Ooh, that's good. Right there, I lifted off a little bit of paint because there was a little extra water on my brush. So I could lay that down there and it soaked off the paint that hadn't quite dried. And that works nicely too. Can you see that? Good enough. All kinds of things go on in the sky. So have fun with it. Okay, so let's go down and get the ocean on. What do you say? I say that, but I keep working on the sky because that's how it goes. You see something that looks like it has potential and you want to do it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take some of the colors that I've used up here to make my ocean, and how I'm going to do that. Let's start with the Crybaby Yellow. There we go. Getting that on there. Let's take some pink. Get that in there. That's pretty intense, but it's going to calm down when I get some more colors there. Try to get that line as best you can. I'm going to grab some blue, activate it, and I'm just going to stripe it across there. Can you see that? Grab a little bit more. Try real hard to get a straight line. Just do what you can. And on this edge, I'm going to try to make this kind of look like the shoreline. I hope I can. I'm going to add a little yellow here. This will green this up a bit because of the blue that was in there. Okay. Let's see what we get. I'm going to take a piece of Saran Wrap and stretch it, stretch it, stretch it. You want to find the edge that is cut straight. There we go. There we go. I'm going to wet this bottom edge just a little bit with water. And maybe I feel like adding a little more blue. It won't be that blue when we're done, but it's pretty. I added a little bit more yellow to green it up. But notice how I didn't stir it all together. I just put the colors in. They'll find their way. Okay, so you take your Saran Wrap and you stretch it so the top edge is straight, and you lay it down. I saw it a little bit, back and forth, back and forth. I do that so that I can get the idea of waves. And you let that dry. I scooted around sometimes to get the look of waves coming in at an angle, or just interesting shapes of sand. I think that's going to work just fine. I've got a nice straight line, pretty close to straight, close enough, let's say, with my Saran Wrap up here. And if it isn't behaving, you could take your brush and give it a little bit more paint and try to make a straight edge again. Laying the Saran Wrap down. Okay, close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's good enough. Okay, so I'll pause now and let this dry.